But if I could turn now to Nikki Kaye. Now, Nikki is the National Party MP for Auckland Central, and like Shane, very involved in the Select Committee working on these bills. So, Nikki, your sense of the progress.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Can I just acknowledge my parliamentary colleague, Shane Jones, and actually acknowledge the huge contribution that he made at the Select Committee. I believe we're losing you, Shane, on Local Government Environment Select Committee. And can I acknowledge Peter as well, who made a huge contribution during the Select Committee process. I think the comments that I would like to focus on are the journey from where we started off within the Select Committee process and some of the issues that came to the Select Committee, where I think we got to, and then some of the challenges in the future. So we've already heard this evening about some of the criticisms that people made, particularly during the second piece of legislation, the first being around local democracy and how many local boards there were, and also how strong those functions and powers were of the local boards. And the biggest point that I make to a number of the groups that I talk to is the reason that this process, in my view, has been so hard is twofold. The first is there are very few things that could be harder for parliamentarians than carving up power, actually. And that is one of the most difficult things that you can do. And I say to people, you know, if you imagine there's a pie of functions and powers, the challenge for the Select Committee was to achieve the right balance whereby we could get on with some regional matters in terms of delivering infrastructure, services from a community development perspective, whether it's services across the arts and culture, or even whether it's environmental responsibility across the city. But also then ensure, as Glenda mentioned, that local communities are able to not only have a say in that and are directly contributing to that, but also are able to get on with some local matters, which picks up on Peter's point, so that there is a clear definition of responsibilities. So that's the first reason why I think it was quite a difficult process. The second thing that I would say as well is that if you look back through Hansard, as I did in my research for the speeches in Parliament, you will find that actually politicians have been trying to do this, have one strong regional entity with the funding and power to be able to deliver across from a social, cultural, environmental and economic perspective across Auckland for arguably 80 years. But I would say, you know, in terms of where the Select Committee got, I think the positive things that came out of the Select Committee, firstly, there were changes to the CCOs, so I think they are now more accountable. It is now in the hands of the Auckland Council as to who sits on those CCOs, which I think is very important because, as we know with the Transport CCO, it is going to be responsible for a large proportion of the rates. And we made sure at the Select Committee that not only would the Auckland councillors be able to appoint those people to the CCO, but also that there was a clear link between the democratic process as to transport policy via the spatial plan, via the local board plans having input in terms of transport preferences, by the Regional Land Transport Fund. So we were able to, I think, improve the legislation to ensure that there was a clear link between the community having a say, but also ensuring that the CCOs could actually get on and deliver some of this infrastructure. The second point that I'd make, I think that was positive, was we made changes to the spatial plan. And I think I've got a little bit of time left, so I'm just going to touch on some things that I think are important in the future and that represent challenges for us. The first one is the spatial plan is crucial. This has the power and the opportunity, and we inserted the term culture and social into that spatial plan to ensure that Auckland finally is able to, whether it's the people of South Auckland who clearly have greater social deprivation than the people of Parnell, be able to look across the city and say, actually, some of those people would have never, under the previous structure, had the ability to have the main street that other areas of Auckland have, and the new structure will enable that to happen. Whether it's from an environmental perspective, to be able to say, actually, a waterway does not stop at the boundary of Auckland Central and Mount Albert, but we will ensure that our urban waterways are better protected. So I think the spatial plan is crucial. I think as well the definition between what happens at a local board and a regional level is something that I think will be fluid and will change within time, and we were very conscious as parliamentarians to enable the flexibility within the local board structure. What is right for Waiheke within my electorate is not right for the CBD, and that is why Parliament did not legislate for those functions and powers. But I think we need to watch that space and ensure that that principle of subsidiarity that exists within the legislation actually works, and we need to keep an eye on that. And the third point I'd make, which touches on Shane's point, is leadership does matter, actually. I'm quite confident in the structure. I think it would be hard for us to get at 100% perfect because we were making so many changes to the legislation. But I think the new mayor, the new councillors and the new local board members must come together and unite. And that would be the significant culture change for the city if that happens. I think the structure can enable that, but it's going to require people to be, as Peter said, positive and start to look at those opportunities. And my final point is that what has been really heartening for me as a local member of Parliament, I can give you many examples whereby I am already seeing people for the first time, whether it's I met with an organisation that's now representing 140 community organisations, they are coming together to say how can we work better together for the city to have regional priorities.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it within the arts sector as well. So what I would say is Parliament can put in a structure, but actually the people on the ground, the people that make the city run are moving and they are already coming together. So I think that's positive.
Thank you. That's a very interesting thing you're pointing out there about how those organisations are starting to form up across the region.
And I'm working with the ATA to ensure that they have some support to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. On that question of the powers of boards versus council, that the Select Committee did not want to be prescriptive about writing into the legislation.
That's right.
Did you have a sense of how quickly that might be sorted out by the new council? What sort of timeframes involved?
Well, I think there's two things. Firstly, there was a discussion document that went out for consultation, and up on the Auckland Council website at the moment is the functions and powers of the local boards. But as many people will probably make the point today, what is the big piece of information that is missing, and we're expecting announcements very soon on that, is what are the budgets of those local boards. And I do think that is crucial. I mean, if you look at some of the communities that came to the Select Committee said, firstly, some of them weren't even allowed to have a community board under the current structure. Secondly, their powers were stripped away from them. And I think the funding is going to be crucial because there is a correlation between, how much money they have to work on local initiatives and how much power and functions they have. So
Fine.
that's crucial.
Thank you very much. A response to Nikki from around the audience. Is there somebody you'd like to jump in there? Penny.
What really concerns me, because I've done research on this that nobody else has done, that there has never been a cost-benefit analysis of the CCO model into which 75% of Auckland regional rates are going to be paid. The Royal Commission never did one, the Department of Internal Affairs never did one, the Office of the Auditor General never did one, the ATA has never done one, none of the 8 councils in the Auckland region have done one, and to cap it all off, neither has Treasury. So how is it that if, as an individual, I had a brilliant business plan and I wanted up to $30 billion of private money, surely someone would have the sense to say, well, it sounds very good, Penny, but have you got any facts or evidence to back up your business plan? No. So how is this okay for public money?